Welcome to a new episode of Opening Bid Unfiltered here at the NASDAQ in Times Square. I'm Yahoo Finance executive editor Brian Sozzi, and a real special episode coming up here with Dr. Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum. Now, a lot of my followers of my work know that I love attending the World Economic Forum every year. It has changed the arc of my career, spending a lot of time with some really transformational leaders there over many years. It has been a real treat to go there each year. Let's bring in Dr. Klaus Schwab here to talk about his new book. Dr. Schwab, it's a real treat to finally get some time with you. You know, I spent many years watching you on stage, do these interviews, work these rooms. So it's a treat to get to see you here. And I thank you for coming on here to do this podcast with me. And it comes at a time for you where you're out with a new book that I find absolutely fascinating. I really enjoyed reading it, called Restoring Truth and Trust, an Agenda for the Intelligent Age. Take us through what made you write this book today.
When I look at the world at the moment, our whole context, political, economic, social, technological context, is in transformation. It's a revolutionary transformation. And humankind has to cope with this transformation. And here we see at the same time an erosion of truth and of trust. So I'm really concerned that if we do not restore, and that's the title of the book, Restoring Truth and Trust, if we are not capable to restore truth and trust in our society, we will lose control over the transformatory processes which are going on and which lead us into a completely different world, which I call the intelligent world.
Why do you think we have arrived at this point where truth and trust are in question?
I think that if we go to the fundamental problem, I think there are several factors at work, but the fundamental issue is that to a certain extent, we have lost a narrative which has guided humankind over so many decades, centuries, I would say, since its existence. And it's the notion to work for the future, to prepare the future, to prepare a better life for ourselves, but also for our children and for the next generations. So having lost this narrative, we are much more focusing as a nation, as individuals, we are much more focusing on the present. And here, I think this creates a much more egoistic world, nationally and individually, and fighting for ourselves means that we manipulate to a large extent what I would call truth. And without truth, you do not have a trusted society.
How is this moment in the world, Dr. Schwab, different than when you founded the World Economic Forum in 1971?
I think what has happened is that the world has become much more complex and much more fast moving and much more systemic. Today, politics, societal issues, technological issues, environmental issues, they are all interdependent. I recall when I created the World Economic Forum and I spoke about the need of public-private cooperation, this was a new idea. Today we know that the big challenges in the world cannot be solved by one actor alone. We need the cooperation. Just think, for example, the need to create ethical guidelines for algorithm, for AI. You cannot do it as a government. You cannot do it as a business alone. You need really a collaborative effort.
One of the first WEFs, of course, that's short for World Economic Forum, that I attended, Dr. Schwab, was really so much focus on stakeholder capitalism. And I remember spending a lot of time at the coffee bar in the Congress Center talking to a lot of CEOs about what that meant to them and what it means to their shareholders. But this event that was just held in 2026, I didn't hear that message. How dismayed are you by that?
Yeah, I think we should probably talk more in the context of long-term and short-term wealth generation, and not having this conflict between shareholders and stakeholders. Because long-term, I think shareholders are also best served by value creation, and value creation is best possible by cultivating the most precious good a company or a government can have, which is trust. And trust comes not only from accumulating profits as much as possible, but also to serve the needs of society, nature, and last but not least, your employees. So we have had some, I would say, some backlash against stakeholder capitalism, and I can understand it because I think there were too much bureaucracy which was creeping into defining the ESGs and so on. But at the end, we have to find a balance where we foster entrepreneurship, which ultimately is the creator of public wealth, but on the other hand, take care of the social problems which we have, challenges, and we create a better balance between man and nature.
How concerned are you that corporate America has swung? I mean, it's been I talked to a lot of CEOs, Dr. Schwab, and they've really pivoted from focus on stakeholder capitalism to let's put out AI in our organization. Let's buy back stocks. Let's fire people. Let's find expense savings. There's been such a shift in how they think in the past 12 to 18 months. What do you think about that?
Yes, I think as long as we had not so many challenges on the global agenda, we had a move which was very favorable to stakeholder capitalism. But now I think the world has become much more looking short term. And so there is this conflict between long term and short term. Shareholders looking more at short term profitability and profits. But I'm convinced that at the end, stakeholder capitalism will triumph, because if we create trust for companies, we also have the capability to attract the best employees, to create trusted relations with our customers. And I think this will benefit the company in the long term. So it's a question, do we take a short-term or long-term approach? And as I mentioned, I'm still a fierce promoter of stakeholder capitalism, and I'm sure this will do well.
Dr. Schwab, how important is it that to rebuild truth and trust that the U.S. has to lead? And I don't have to tell you this. It has become very polarized politically in the U.S. on both sides of the aisle. How important is it to dial some of these things down if we want to rebuild truth and trust?
I think what we see not only in the US, I mean, even in the European countries, we have this polarization of populations. And I come back to the notion of facts. If I go back in the history of the forum, I think at the beginning people acknowledged that there were certain facts. You may have had different opinions about the facts, but at the end, by dialogue, you could investigate what were the assumptions, and you found a common denominator. Today, people are sticking with their opinions and are defending their opinions without looking necessarily at the assumptions which are behind the opinions. So that's what's missing in all the dialogues is the willingness to go really into the facts and to establish the truth, and then to have a dialogue on how we create solutions for the problems which we have.
Dr. Schwab, hang with us for 1 second. We're going to go off for a very short break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Opening Bid Unfiltered here at the NASDAQ in Times Square. Having a real special conversation with Dr. Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, it's an event that I love going to every single year. It is, we don't have a version of the Super Bowl in financial news, but this is, I think, my version of it every single year. Dr. Schwab, for those not familiar with your story, why did you found WEF?
Why in Davos? It's, of course, it's a very nice village in the Swiss mountains. But when I founded the World Economic Forum, I felt it should be different from conferences in big cities. It should represent, to a certain extent, a global village where people can walk, they meet also not only in the conference hall, they meet in relatively, I mean, Davos has not many luxury hotels, so it's a relatively modest lifestyle. I see you smiling, but I know how difficult it is.
It's very difficult.
Find a room which is larger than 12 square meters because people are out for skiing during the days. So I wanted also, in Switzerland, we have obligatory military service. And you, whether you are the head of a bank or whatever it is, you come together every year or every third year, and you share a common space. And I wanted to make Davos a common space where there are no barriers and where people really interact.
Is it your hope that the annual meeting will always be in Davos? You've heard some murmurs that there might be another event created in a different location. What's your hope for the long-term vision of WEF?
My hope is that we stay in this village context, and Davos offers the optimal conditions. But I'm much more concerned, let's say the location is very important, but the core of the annual meeting is even more important, the soul. And the soul of the meeting is that it is really a place where not only business and politicians meet, but where all key stakeholders, I come back to the notion of stakeholders, where all key stakeholders are involved. And that's the reason why I made particular efforts to integrate young voices, to integrate NGOs. So you have the whole diversity of global societies. And Davos has also become very well known because it integrated since many, many years also what we call now the New South. So it really should be this global village, but at the same time, Davos should not be a mirror only of what's happening today. It should be mainly a platform where you shape the future through the exchange amongst the diversified community which represents the global population.
I always thought the spirit or the core, like you mentioned, Dr. Schwab, of Davos was cooperation, countries working together, CEOs working together. Of course, they network at this event, but everybody's cooperating, getting things done. What did you think the President Trump's main speech this year, did that capture the essence of why you created WEF in your view?
I think to a certain extent, Davos is always a reflection of what's happening. And many people say they come at the beginning of the year to Davos to feel the pulse of the year. And this year, Davos had the opportunity to welcome President Trump and his key cabinet members, and a very strong American business community. I think that's a reflection of what's happening at the moment in the world, with a preeminence of, let's say, the US determining the news of what's happening in the world.
This is a very important moment for Europe. How should European leaders view the U.S. at this point, and how should they respond to some of the criticisms from the U.S. administration?
I think at the end, a partnership needs two equals. Then a partnership is most stable if you have two partners of equal weight. And of course, you could argue Europe has more or less the same economic weight as US has. The US has certainly many advantages because it has what I call systems leadership in many areas, like the financial area, like the digital area, the artificial intelligence. But I think this year's annual meeting was a good wake-up call for Europe, because Europe has become inferior, and I think it's good if the message which was heard in Davos leads to a situation of closer cooperation in Europe. And I see this also as a good way to fortify US European relations. If Europe, for example, in the defense sector shows that it is taking the necessary efforts to be able to defend itself, ultimately, I think it should be always in alliance with the US, but I can understand that the US will profit from a strong European partner. And I hope that Davos was a message really for Europe to get its act together.
How concerned are you about the state of the relationship between China and the US?
I think it is it will determine probably the agenda to a large extent in the next 10 years, because we see the world becoming, being, let's say, structured along the two superpowers, the US and China making all the efforts in terms of catching up, particularly related to the decisive technologies. I think China has recognized that leadership tomorrow means the mastership of what I call the fourth industrial revolution, the key technologies which provide superiority. So we will have a very competitive environment. And coming back to Europe, I think it will be very important for Europe to play a kind of reconciliatory role in what certainly will be a period of tensions. And I hope that those tensions can be resolved. And I'm optimistic that also China and US will create a close working relationship, because the challenges we face on a global level are much too high. Just think of the need to develop frameworks for AI, think of environmental issues, think of the nuclear issue, and so on and so on.
Dr. Schwab, you left the World Economic Forum in 2025 with some tensions with the World Economic Forum. What did it feel like for you not to be, that front person for something that you founded this year? I mean, more angry, sad, hurt? How do you think about it?
I am, how shall I say, I have to recognize even if I feel very healthy and intellectually and in every form. But I have to realize that I have worked now more than 25 years, probably beyond the retirement age. And I addressed this issue, by the way, in a book which I wrote and published last month, which is Longevity and Retirement. I feel we need a new narrative, because you are not out with 65. You can work much longer, be active much longer. But I think, to make it short, that whatever your age is, we have to make contributions still to the world. We have to live up to a specific purpose which we choose. And so, to respond to your question, I'm enjoying now to come back to my roots and to be particularly intellectually active in form of the series of books which I publish on the intelligent age. If I may shortly explain,
Of course.
we had the transition from the agricultural to the industrial age, which changed everything: society, economics, politics, and so on. We are now in the transition from the industrial age to the intelligent age, which is dominated by artificial intelligence, but many other technologies, and they are all working in combination. And we will have again a completely different world. We have no time of 2 or 3 generations as we had in the tradition from the agricultural to the industrial world. We have only 10, 15 years, and we will see a completely different world. And I want to help the world to prepare for such a situation.
If the World Economic Forum and a Larry Fink sent you an invite for next year, would you come back?
Oh, of course, I will come back. Depending on the situation, I'm only participating in something when I can take an active role.
You've had, I was thinking back before doing this, you would always do the keynote interview at the World Economic Forum. Out of all of these conversations over many years, is there one that was your favorite? And if so, why?
I think if I look back, the key message which I would take out of all what I have learned in the world, I would summarize it in the notion of constructive optimism, which means we have a tendency everywhere now to look at our future with fear, and the fear is justified. Let's not forget, we have a war in Europe, we have many other issues, we have social problems and so on. But at the end, we should always believe in our capability to create a better world. And I speak about constructive optimism. To create a better world needs our own personal engagement. So we have to contribute to make this optimism justified.
Is it fair to say that you view your legacy as someone that just tried to make the world better?
Yes, it's not the World Economic Forum as such. I see the World Economic Forum as an ecosystem. And if I look, for example, at the different facets of the World Economic Forum, I'm most proud and maybe of 2 things. The first one is that the forum has served on many occasions as a decisive factor, for example, to create better relations, once even to prevent the war and so on. But the other thing I'm particularly proud of is the social entrepreneurs, the community which we have created, which has shown the 500 social entrepreneurs in our community, which are associated with the World Economic Forum, they had, and we can demonstrate it, a positive impact on the lives of over 800 million people. And that's not just what's going on in Davos and what some people may consider to be elitist, but it's what's going on the ground. And here I'm particularly proud of.
It's so great to spend some time with you. And I thank you for inviting a smaller newsroom in Yahoo Finance, I believe first to Davos in 2015. Your team has been always great to work with, and we appreciate it. Dr. Klaus Schwab, please read this book, Restoring Truth and Trust, An Agenda for the Intelligent Age. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
See you in Davos next year.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And that's it for the latest episode of Opening Bid Unfiltered. Thank you so much for all the support. We'll talk to you soon.